The digital clock in the kitchen counter-glowed 12:07 a.m. as Captain Daniel Hayes slid his key into the back door. He had returned home 3 days earlier than expected, his uniform jacket still damp with night air, boots whispering against the tile. The house greeted him with silence. No television hum, no refrigerator buzz, just a stillness that felt wrong. Then it came, a sound that didn't belong. A muted splash, a thrashing ripple, like someone fighting against water. Daniel froze, every muscle coiled. The sound came from outside, the pool. His hand instinctively dropped to the holster on his hip, fingers brushing cool steel. His training screamed caution, but his heart, the heart of a father, pushed him forward. He eased through the kitchen, steps slow, controlled. The sliding glass door loomed ahead, its thin curtains swaying from the faint night breeze. The sounds grew clearer, water churning, then a sharp cough swallowed beneath the splash. Daniel slid the door open by inches. A rush of humid night air hit his face. The backyard pool glowed under pale blue lights, shimmering with waves that didn't belong to calm water. And in the center of it, bound by rope, Michael, his 12-year-old son, thrashed helplessly. His wrists were tied tight in front of him, legs struggling against cords that cut into his skin. His eyes, wide with terror, flashed once toward the patio. He was sinking, gasping, bubbles clawing toward the surface. On the pool's edge knelt a man Daniel didn't recognize. Tall, broad shoulders, a cruel smirk carved across his face. One hand gripped Michael's hair, forcing his head beneath the surface again and again. He wasn't drowning him quickly. He was toying with him, savoring it. And then Daniel saw her. Claire, his wife. She stood a few feet away, arms folded across her chest. She didn't scream. She didn't move. Her face was pale in the glow, eyes unreadable, lips pressed into a thin line. She watched, her own son fighting for breath, and did nothing. Daniel's chest constricted, rage and disbelief colliding. The pistol cleared his holster before he realized he had drawn it. Let him go. His voice thundered across the patio. The man finally looked up. His eyes narrowed, smirk deepening. You're not in command here, soldier. Michael's body jerked beneath the water, bubbles escaping his lips. Claire's gaze flicked once toward Daniel, then away, her face blank, unreadable. Daniel took 2 steps forward, arm steady, sight picture-locked. Let him go, he repeated colder this time. And then, the man laughed, a low, mocking sound that crawled across the water. But the laugh faltered. His expression twitched, because on his chest, glowing faintly, a red of a rifle laser bloomed. His eyes darted toward the hedges, then back to Daniel. The smirk cracked. Daniel didn't move. He didn't need to. He knew exactly who was out there, watching from the shadows with a steady trigger finger. For the first time that night, the man's confidence wavered. Michael's thrashing grew weaker. Time was running out. The night had only just begun, and already it was spiraling into something Daniel couldn't yet name. The red dot lingered on Ethan's chest, pulsing faintly with each ripple of the pool's reflection. His smirk faltered, and for the first time, his grip on Michael's hair hesitated. The boy's body thrashed weakly beneath the surface, bubbles breaking in frantic bursts. Daniel's voice cut through the night, steady and lethal. Pull him up. Now. The man met his gaze, unblinking, testing him. You don't give orders here, he sneered. But his eyes darted once toward the hedge line, the unseen shooter keeping him marked. Daniel didn't flinch. He knew exactly who was out there. Reza Patel, neighbor, former teammate. They hadn't spoken in weeks, but their pact never needed words. If the porch light blinked twice at night, it meant danger. And Reza never ignored signal. Ethan's smirk returned, thinner this time. With a sharp jerk, he yanked Michael's head above the water. The boy gasped, coughed, sucked in ragged air, only to be shoved back down again. Daniel's knuckles whitened on the grip of his pistol. His heart hammered, but his aim didn't waver. Claire finally moved. Her arms unfolded, hands curling into fists at her sides. She stepped closer, her expression still unreadable, though her jaw trembled. For an instant, Her eyes locked on Daniel's. Something flickered there. A warning? A plea? Or guilt too heavy to hide? Claire. Daniel's voice cracked just once. Step away from him. But she didn't. She froze, lips pressed tight, eyes glistening under the pool light. And then she whispered, almost too soft to hear, "Don't waste your bullets." Daniel's gut turned cold. It wasn't surrender. It was a warning. He shifted his stance, instinct scanning the yard. That's when he caught it. Movement reflected in the glass of the sliding kitchen door. Shadows slipping inside. Not one, two. They weren't alone. Daniel raised his voice, sharp as a blade. Reza, eyes on the house. The laser dot vanished instantly, the sign his teammate had moved position. Ethan dragged Michael upright again, pressing the knife, now drawn from his waistband, against the boy's throat. Water dripped from Michael's hair, his chest heaving, sobs choking out of him. Ethan grinned wide again, emboldened. "You see," he taunted. "You're boxed in. Lower the weapon." Behind Daniel, the sliding door rattled. Two figures stepped into the doorway. Men dressed in matte black, rifles leveled, faces hidden beneath balaclavas. The red laser from the hedge reappeared, twitching between them and Ethan, never settling. "Hands up, Captain," one ordered. His voice was clipped, professional. Too clean to be street thugs. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears, but his mind sharpened. Military stance. Tactical gear. Precision rifles. These weren't amateurs. This wasn't random. His son wasn't just a victim of cruelty. This was an operation. "Drop it, Daniel." Ethan's voice rose, knife pressing harder against Michael's throat. "You think you're home, but this is still the field, and you're not the one calling shots anymore." Daniel's aim didn't waver, but his chest burned. His boy's terrified eyes locked on his. The laser danced on Ethan's heart, and the faintest nod from the hedge told him Reza was waiting for a cue. But Daniel held steady. His training screamed patience. His instincts screamed action. And overall, Claire's voice broke again, louder this time, her mask slipping for just a second. "Daniel, please." It wasn't guilt. It wasn't betrayal. It was fear, a warning laced in desperation. Daniel's blood ran cold. This wasn't just an attack. It was a trap built for him. And somehow his wife knew exactly how deep it went. Daniel's breath fogged in the night air, his pistol still locked on target. The pool's soft light flickered across the patio, throwing cruel shadows on Claire's face. She stood frozen, arms tight across her chest, but her eyes kept flicking to the gate, to the folded towel on the chair, then back to him. Codes. Old signals they had used when Michael was a baby and Daniel was constantly deployed. Folded towel meant danger close. Claire had placed it deliberately. Daniel narrowed his gaze. She wasn't as detached as she appeared. She was warning him silently. Ethan pressed the knife harder against Michael's throat. A thin line of blood welled under the boy's skin. "Weapon down, Captain," he drawled, "or your son learns what drowning feels like for the last time." Behind Daniel, the two masked riflemen advanced a step. Their boots crunched against the patio tiles, rifles trained center mass. Professional, methodical. Daniel adjusted his stance, pistol steady, heart pounding, but mind calculating. He spoke without looking back. "You're not freelancers. Who sent you?" The closer rifleman tilted his head. "Orders don't concern you. Surrender." Daniel's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked once more to Claire. She shifted her weight, and her heel tapped the coping stone 3 times. A sound so soft only he would notice. 3 taps. Cameras. They were being recorded. Daniel's chest tightened. This wasn't a simple home invasion. It was staged, choreographed, documented. His death wouldn't just happen. It would be explained, written into a narrative. Michael whimpered, tears mixing with chlorinated water on his cheeks. "Dad," his voice cracked, desperate. Daniel's knuckles whitened on his pistol. "Let him go," he repeated, colder now. His voice was steel, but inside he fought a storm. Every instinct screamed to fire, but the angle, the knife, the rifles behind him made the risk impossible. Reza's laser crawled across Ethan's chest, pausing, then shifted toward the rifleman closest to Daniel. A message only Daniel would catch. 2 targets. Prioritize. Ethan laughed, low and mocking. You were never supposed to walk through that door tonight. 3 days early, Hayes. You just had to ruin the timing. Daniel's mind sharpened. That meant they knew his schedule. They had inside information. His leave, his deployment dates. Someone had fed them every detail. His stomach sank. The only person close enough to know those things was Claire. For a moment, his focus wavered. He looked at her, searching her face for truth. Claire's lips parted, trembling, but she said nothing. Just that same look, eyes glistening, pleading silently. Michael's body jerked as Ethan yanked him back under the water for a few seconds before lifting him up again. The boy gasped, sobbing, barely conscious. Daniel's voice cracked like a whip. "Stop." Ethan smirked. "Not until you drop it." Daniel exhaled through his teeth, lowering his pistol just an inch, enough to suggest surrender, but not enough to break readiness. His voice dropped to a growl. "You're not going to kill him. Not yet. He's leverage. This isn't about him. It's about me." The riflemen exchanged glances. The silence between them spoke volumes. Daniel was right. Claire turned sharply, her voice breaking for the first time. "Don't hurt him. He's just a child." Everyone froze. Her voice cracked with desperation, not staged indifference. Daniel caught the way her hands trembled, fists clenching as if she were holding herself back from lunging forward. Ethan's smirk faltered. "Keep your mouth shut," he barked at her. Daniel's chest burned. She wasn't just complicit. She was trapped too. The codes, the towel, the taps, they weren't for guilt. They were cries for help. But the fact remained. She knew. She had known long before tonight. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. This wasn't a family betrayal anymore. This was a mission, one carefully built around him. And if they had planned this long enough to use his wife, then the enemy knew him better than he realized. The patio lights hummed faintly, the pool water rippling with Michael's weak movements. Daniel's pistol hovered just below ready, his eyes cutting between Ethan, the masked rifleman, and Claire. Every breath he took was measured, every decision balanced on a knife's edge. "Why me?" he demanded, his voice low but sharp. "Who sent you?" The rifleman on the left shifted his stance, barrel never leaving Daniel. "You don't need the name," he said flatly. Ethan tightened his hold on Michael, pressing the knife hard enough to draw another thin trickle of blood. He leaned close to Daniel, lips curling into a grin. "Don't you see? This was never about the boy. He's just the hook. You're the prize." Daniel's stomach twisted, his suspicion hardening into certainty. "This is an op," he said slowly. "Who's running it?" The other rifleman spoke this time, his voice tinged with satisfaction. "Package Raven. Orders from the top. Tonight we close it." The name slammed into Daniel like a hammer. Package Raven. He hadn't heard it in years. Not since a black file mission he'd filed reports on, reports that had quietly disappeared. Reports naming powerful men who had ordered civilian death scrubbed off as collateral damage. His grip on the pistol tightened. That mission was supposed to be buried forever. Whoever these men were, they weren't just assassins. They were silencers. Ethan's eyes glittered, enjoying Daniel's realization. You were supposed to die overseas, you know, but you kept crawling back. Too stubborn, too righteous, too much of a problem. Daniel's pulse thundered. "So who wanted me gone?" The rifleman tilted his head as if savoring the reveal. Then he said the name. Colonel Ward. Daniel's blood ran ice cold. His father's name. Claire flinched visibly, a strangled sound escaping her throat before she could stop it. Her hands shook, and she turned her face away. Ethan's smirk deepened. Daniel's voice came out rough, controlled by force. "Ward ordered this?" Ethan leaned closer, dragging Michael with him, forcing the boy to whimper in terror. Not just ordered it. He designed it. Every detail. The schedule. The recording. Even her part. He jerked his head toward Claire. Daniel's eyes snapped to her. She looked pale, stricken, her lips trembling. She didn't deny it. Tears welled, but she held his gaze, as if begging him to understand. The silence cut deeper than any words. Daniel's chest heaved. His father, the man who abandoned him long ago, who vanished from his life when he was barely Michael's age, was the architect of this ambush. And Claire had known. "Claire," Daniel's voice was raw, breaking. "Tell me it isn't true." Her lips parted, a whisper escaping. I had no choice. Ethan chuckled darkly. Oh, she had a choice. She chose survival. She chose to keep her son breathing one more night. He pressed the blade harder against Michael's throat, making the boy whimper. But tonight, that choice ends. Daniel's whole body shook with restrained fury. Ray's laser crawled back onto Ethan's chest, a silent promise. Daniel didn't blink. His mind reeled with the truth. His father had betrayed him, his wife had been coerced, and his son was being used as bait. The first shock had landed. But Daniel knew this was only the surface. If Colonel Ward was pulling the strings, then tonight was just the beginning. Wind skimmed the pool and carried chlorinated cold across the patio. Daniel held his pistol low, eyes moving. Ethan at the coping with the knife. Michael shivering, lips blue. Two riflemen in the doorway. Claire rigid, shaking and trying not to show it. The name Colonel Ward still rang in his skull, like a struck bell. Package Raven proceeds. The left rifleman said into a shoulder mic, asset present. Static hissed, then a clipped reply. Confirm camera coverage. Complete indoors. Claire's heel tapped the coping 3 times again. Cameras. And her gaze cut to the pergola beam. Daniel followed it. The faintest red glimmer inside a screw head. Pinhole lens. Another wink from a planter light. They'd ring the yard to capture a narrative. Unhinged soldier. Domestic tragedy. Drowning gone wrong. 10 seconds, Daniel said, voice controlled. You push a hypoxic kid past the edge, and he seizes. You lose leverage, and I stop negotiating. Ethan's grin thinned, but he didn't look at the boy. He looked at the cameras. The rifleman traded a glance. After a beat, the one on the right jerked his chin. Up. 10. Ethan yanked Michael's head above water. The boy gagged, coughed, pulled a strangled breath that sounded like tearing paper. Claire moved on instinct, dropping to her knees at the edge, palms out, not quite touching. Michael, look at me. In through the nose. Her voice trembled and steadied in one breath. Mother voice. Real. Hands where I can see them, the rifleman snapped. She lifted them, open. Her wedding ring was turned inward. Their old sign for danger is inside the house. Daniel felt his throat tighten. Weapon down. The other rifleman ordered, taking a half step onto the patio. On the tiles. Kick it back. Daniel kept the muzzle pointed toward stone, not flesh. Let the boy stay up for those 10 seconds while I comply. He set the pistol slowly at his boot and, casually, as if clearing space, shifted his foot until the sole kissed the brass gas valve on the pool heater line. He felt its knurled handle against leather. Quarter turn. Loose. Now kick it, the rifleman repeated. Daniel slid the weapon back with the side of his shoe, deliberately scraping metal on tile to cover the soft click of the valve turning a hair. Raised up blinked once on Ethan's sternum, then slid off, saw it. The signal loop was alive. Time, Ethan said, and shoved Michael down again. Daniel's fingers flexed, nails biting into his palms. Claire flinched but didn't scream. Instead, she leaned forward as if to steady herself and let a house key slip from her sleeve into her hand, closing her fingers around it. Her eyes never left Daniel's. Not now. Soon. Inside, the left rifleman said, voice gaining edge. Bring them through the kitchen. Cleaner angles. Less neighbor interference. He motioned Daniel with the barrel. You first. Let the boy stand, Daniel said. He can't walk with his legs bound if you drown him between steps. 2 seconds. Ethan mocked, but he lifted Michael again, dragging him toward the shallow steps. The boy sobbed, air whistling in a raw throat. Claire rose, moving parallel, hands out, key hidden in her palm, her shoulder brushing the knife wrist like an accident. The blade nicked her skin. She didn't flinch. The sliding door rattled wider. Kitchen lights stayed off. 2 black shapes filled the frame. The right-hand rifleman kept his muzzle square on Daniel's chest. The left drifted his aim to the hedge line, uneasy about the unseen shooter. Ray's laser vanished, repositioning. Jacket, the right-hand rifleman said. Off. Slow. He wanted to see if Daniel was hiding another weapon. He didn't want the cameras to miss compliance. Daniel shrugged one shoulder, then the other, easing the jacket free. As it slid off, he pivoted a half step to set it on the heater housing, covering the slight misalignment of the gas handle with a fold of cloth. The movement was small, forgettable. It drew no shout. "Hands," the rifleman said. Daniel lifted them, fingers spread, body turned just enough that the heater, Ethan, and the nearer rifleman sketched a nearly straight line through his peripheral vision. Distance, angles, flash paths. His mind drew the geometry and filed it. "Move," the left rifleman said. Daniel took one step toward the door, then another, forcing the rifleman to shift to maintain their triangulation. It brought the nearer man closer to the pergola post, blocking half a camera's view. The far man edged around the island inside, boots whispering on tile. Ethan hauled Michael up one step, the boy stumbling, rope scraping stone. Claire reached to steady him, the hidden key sawing once, twice against a wet knot. No one looked at her hand. Everyone watched Daniel. "Eyes on me," Ethan taunted, knife at Michael's throat again. "If he bleeds, that's on you." Daniel did not give him the satisfaction. He looked over Ethan's shoulder, past flame-blackened copper pipe, past the jacket hiding the valve, to the hedge. One blink from the shadows answered. "On your cue." "Final warning," the right-hand rifleman said, stepping closer, muzzle settling between Daniel's eyes. "Hands on head." Daniel lifted his hands higher, elbows flared. It exposed his ribs, made him look larger for the cameras, and, barely, shifted his stance. His right heel brushed the heater pad. He could feel the hum through the concrete. Live gas. Igniter ready. Claire drew a breath she didn't release. Michael stared across the water at his father, eyes glass-bright, lips forming a word without sound. "Please." Daniel let his gaze touch the boy and then Claire. 2 beats. 3. He memorized the line of their bodies, the distance to the steps, the fall of the knife hand, the post that would shield them from a blast of heat. His face didn't change when he made the decision. Only his eyes did. He gave Reza the tiniest nod. The night hung motionless, heavy with the smell of chlorine and the faint hiss of gas. Daniel's nod had been small, almost imperceptible, but Reza would have seen it. He always did. Years in the field together had built a language that didn't need words. Ethan yanked Michael another step up from the pool, knife pressed cruelly against the boy's throat. Michael staggered, choking, his thin frame trembling from cold and fear. Claire's hand remained at his back, steadying him, the hidden key sawing almost invisibly at the wet rope around his wrists. A single strand snapped. Michael flinched at the sound, and Claire's grip tightened in reassurance. The rifleman closest to Daniel shifted his stance, pressing forward. "Hands on your head," he repeated, more forceful now. The second rifleman adjusted his aim to cover Claire, as if sensing her subtle movements. Daniel raised his hands slowly above his head, the picture of surrender. His jacket, still draped over the pool heater, concealed the slightly loosened gas valve beneath. Flames hadn't sparked yet, but one shot, one spark, and the whole patio would ignite. "Take a step forward," the first rifleman ordered. Daniel obeyed, placing his heel deliberately against the heater pad. He felt the vibration, the dangerous pressure of fuel waiting for release. His jaw tightened. Timing had to be perfect. Too soon, and Michael would burn. Too late, and the rifleman would cut them down. Ethan grinned, emboldened by Daniel's apparent submission. "See? Even heroes kneel when family's on the line." He yanked Michael close, dragging the boy's head back against his chest. "You'll watch him bleed before you take your last breath." Claire's face twisted, a tear slipping free. "Stop," she whispered. "Please, he's a child." Ethan sneered. "He's bait. That's all he ever was." Michael whimpered, whispering through trembling lips, "Dad." The sound nearly broke Daniel, but his expression stayed, carved from stone. He measured distances again. 5 paces to Ethan, 6 to the heater, 3 to the closest rifleman. Reza's position was unseen, but the faint shimmer of the red laser reappeared, sweeping slowly across Ethan's chest before settling on the wrist holding the knife. Precision aim. Daniel exhaled once, steady. "You're not walking away from this," he said, voice calm but ice cold. The rifleman barked. "Shut up. Move." Daniel's eyes cut to Claire. Her lips trembled, but she tapped her foot once against the coping. Now, his decision ignited in that instant. Daniel dropped suddenly to one knee, his arm snapping down. In the same motion, he drove his heel hard into the jacket-covered valve. The brass handle spun fully open with a hiss. A cloud of gas burst from the heater vent. At that exact moment, Reza fired. The rifle cracked, the bullet slicing through the night. Ethan screamed, the knife clattering from his hand as his wrist exploded in blood. Michael stumbled free, Claire yanking him to the ground. Daniel rolled sideways, snatching his pistol from the tiles where he had left it earlier. He aimed, not at Ethan, not at the rifleman, but at the igniter on the heater. One shot. The world erupted. Flames roared upward in a violent plume, heat washing over the patio. The blast blinded cameras and forced the rifleman to dive for cover. Shards of glass from the sliding door shattered inward. Smoke filled the night. "Go!" Daniel roared, grabbing Michael with one hand and shoving Claire toward the far gate with the other. Bullets cracked past, muffled by the flames. One rifleman screamed as fire licked his gear, dragging him into the shadows. The second shouted into his comm, "Asset hostile. Fire compromised." His voice was panicked now, the professional comm shattered. Daniel pressed Michael against his chest, shielding him as debris rained. His son sobbed, clinging to him. Claire stumbled beside them, her shoulder bleeding from where the knife had grazed her earlier. Through the inferno's glow, Ethan crawled across the tiles, clutching his ruined wrist, blood smearing the stone. His eyes burned with hatred, his grin twisted through the pain. "You think this ends tonight?" he spat. "Ward will bury you himself." Daniel's pistol rose, steady despite the chaos. His voice was low, lethal. "Not if I bury him first." And then, through fire and smoke, sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder. The night had exploded into violence, but Daniel knew this was only the first battle. The trap had failed, but the war his father had started was far from over. Sirens swelled, thin at first, then fuller, warbling over the roofs. Heat baked the patio, smoke curled off the shattered door. Daniel shoved Michael behind the chaise and pressed Claire low beside him. Ethan crawled toward the knife with his good hand, lips skinned back in a grin. Reza's voice hissed from the hedge, barely air, 2 more inbound. "Alley, lights off." The gate, left unlatched, gaped a hand's width. Beyond it, the dark strip of the side yard ran to the alley, where an engine idled with headlights dead. A second, softer siren ghosted past, fading fast, as if a cruiser had been waved through and kept going. Daniel's neck prickled. Reinforcements were closer than uniforms. The unburned rifleman reappeared in the kitchen shadow, muzzle flashing once. Tal spat chips beside Daniel's cheek. He yanked Michael closer, felt the boy's ribs jump under his palm. Claire's breath stuttered, blood seeping from her shoulder through torn blouse, eyes locked on the gate like it was the last clean thing left. "On me," Daniel said low. He snatched his dropped pistol, then swept a fallen contractor's carbine toward him with a heel and slung it one-handed. The kitchen shooter ducked back. The comm on his vest squawked. Raven compromised. Phoenix inbound. Purge and egress. Purge. Burn it clean. No witnesses. Daniel's gaze cut to the pergola camera. Its lens was spider-cracked, still blinking red. If Phoenix took control of the scene first, tonight would be rewritten. "Reza," Daniel breathed, "cover gate." A faint click answered. "Ready." Claire's fist was still clenched around the house key. The rope at Michael's wrists hung in frayed loops. One more cut would free him. Daniel nodded once. She slid the key's edge under the last wet braid and sawed, steady even as her hand shook. The cord parted. Michael sucked a sob in through his teeth and clutched his mother's arm. Ethan laughed wetly. "You think sirens mean safety?" He rolled his wrist, blood pooling in his palm. "Ward owns the first 5 minutes." Daniel didn't look at him. He reached, grabbed Ethan's collar, and dragged him across hot tile with a single, impersonal pull, flipping him onto his stomach and jamming a knee between his shoulders. From the down contractor's vest, he tore a zip tie, wrenching Ethan's wrists together. Ethan hissed, feral. Up close, in the flicker of flame, the old scar under his chin showed clear, a rough crescent like Daniel's, like his father's. Daniel filed it in the pit of his chest and didn't let it slow his hands. "Move," he told Claire and Michael, low, through the gate. Raises stuttered twice across the fence slats, 2 targets, alley side. Daniel pushed them ahead, then pivoted, carbine up to the kitchen. The rifleman leaned to fire. Daniel stitched 2 controlled rounds into the doorframe, forcing him back. Smoke fanned through the house, tripping a shrieking alarm. They slid along the siding, knees in mulch, elbows bumping. At the gate, Raises whisper, SUV left, one on hood, one by rear quarter. Claire gathered Michael, ready to spring. The alley engine grumbled, then cut. Boots scraped. "Now," Daniel said. They spilled through as Raises' suppressed shot snapped. The man on the hood folded soundlessly. The second dove, returning fire with a wild burst that chewed cedar fence. Daniel took the angle, fired twice. The man jerked and went still. The SUV's rear door cracked open. A third silhouette braced to shoot. Daniel yanked Claire and Michael behind the SUV's front tire as rounds pinged off steel. Raises' laser found the third chest. A breath later, a dull thud, then quiet. Sirens grew loud again, closer, real this time, the heavy yowl of multiple units. Across the yard, the kitchen rifleman made his bid, sprinting through smoke for the side path. Daniel caught the movement and met him at the corner. The man's muzzle rose. Daniel slammed the carbine sideways into it, metal on metal, then drove his shoulder into the man's sternum. They hit dirt hard. The man clawed for a knife. Daniel trapped the wrist, twisted, felt tendons pop, and chopped his forearm across the throat. Air gagged out of him. His grip slackened. A knee to the temple finished it. "Danny!" Claire's cry wavered. He spun. 2 more figures at the alley mouth, faster, cleaner, with chest rigs and short-barreled rifles, moving like they'd drilled this block for weeks. "Phoenix! Back!" Daniel hauled Claire and Michael behind the SUV again, breath burning, mind mapping routes. Over the neighbor's wall? Through the hedges to Raises' yard? "Hold here and let Phoenix crash into uniforms." "Hands where we can see them," one Phoenix operator shouted, voice icy, authority without badge. "Weapons down." Blue wash finally spilled across the alley as the first patrol car nosed in, light bar screaming. The Phoenix shooters froze a fraction, recalculating. One lifted his rifle higher, choosing pressure over retreat. Daniel saw it. The narrow gap where 2 wars collided, one lawful, one bought. His son's fingers dug into his sleeve. Claire's eyes met his, raw and steady. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "don't let them take the story." He rose into the blue and the gunmetal, carbine low, palms open, and stepped where the dash cams could see his face. "Officer!" he shouted, voice hoarse but carrying. Multiple armed assailants. "House is hot. Cameras on." The night held its breath as badges and mercenaries measured the cost of the next trigger pull. Blue strobes splashed across the alley, staining brick walls and fences in frantic rhythm. The patrol car's engine idled low, its radio crackling with clipped chatter. 2 uniformed officers stepped out, pistols drawn, light beams cutting into smoke and shadow. "Police! Hand where we can see them," one barked, voice sharp, trained. Daniel kept his palms high, carbine dangling by its sling. His chest rose and fell like a piston, but his stance stayed rooted, deliberate. Michael clung to his side, fingers tangled in his sleeve. Claire crouched close, one arm around their boy, her blouse soaked through the shoulder, blood still seeping. Across the alley, the Phoenix operatives froze mid-step, rifles leveled, faces hidden behind dark masks. They weren't amateurs. Their aim never wavered, even with blue lights bathing them. "Drop your weapons," the second officer shouted. His beams swept across Daniel first, then jerked to the masked men. His breath caught. He recognized the difference. Daniel was in civilian wear, holding a boy. The others moved like soldiers. "This is police jurisdiction," the first officer warned, voice loud but faltering under the tension. Put those rifles down. The lead Phoenix operative spoke for the first time, voice calm, rehearsed. Federal tasking. Stand down. Subject is classified. He gestured toward Daniel with a tilt of his rifle. We'll take custody. Daniel's gut twisted. Smooth cover story. Fast enough to sound practiced, broad enough to sow doubt. That's my son, Daniel growled. These men tried to drown him. Claire's voice cracked. They're not law enforcement. Look at their gear. The officers hesitated. Confusion thickened the air. One muttered into his radio. Dispatch. Confirm federal presence? Static answered. No confirmation. Reza moved unseen along the fence, silent as ever, the faintest glint of his laser crawling onto the lead Phoenix's chest. Daniel's pulse matched its beat. The operative smirked beneath his mask. Last chance, Captain Hayes. Surrender now, or everyone bleeds. Daniel's blood iced. They know my name. The word captain landed like a hammer. Michael stiffened, eyes darting up to him in shock. He hadn't told his son about missions, about rank, about the wars that had hollowed him out. Hearing it from an enemy cut through the night like betrayal. Daniel stepped forward a fraction, voice steady, caring for the cameras on the patrol car's dash. Officers, my name is Captain Daniel Hayes, U.S. Special Operations. These men are private contractors under Colonel Ward, attempting an illegal assassination on U.S. soil. They staged my son's drowning for leverage. Body cams up now. The officers' eyes widened. Both thumbed their cameras on, tiny red lights blinking alive. The Phoenix operatives shifted uneasily. Their plan depended on shadows, not recordings. Shut it down. The lead Phoenix barked, snapping his rifle toward Daniel. That was the mistake. The officer beside the cruiser saw it, instincts snapping faster than orders. His pistol bucked twice, two sharp cracks. One round glanced off the SUV's panel. The second punched into the Phoenix's shoulder, staggering him. The alley exploded in gunfire. Daniel grabbed Claire and Michael, dragging them flat behind the SUV. Sparks showered as rounds slammed metal. Reza's suppressed rifle coughed 3 times from a hedge. One Phoenix dropped, crumpling. Claire shielded Michael's head with her arms, blood streaking her sleeve. Don't look, baby, don't look. Daniel swung his carbine around the SUV's edge, sighted fast, and squeezed. The lead Phoenix reeled back, mask cracking as a round tore through his cheek. His rifle clattered on concrete. The second operative returned fire, pinning the officers behind their cruiser. Bullets shrieked down the alley. Daniel leaned, fired a short burst. The man stumbled but didn't fall. Reza's voice cut in from the dark. One left flank. Daniel turned just as a third operative, hidden till now, slipped from the far corner, rifle rising. He didn't think. He shoved Claire and Michael lower and fired 3 shots in quick rhythm. The man collapsed, weapons skidding across the alley stones. The silence that followed was ragged, broken only by Michael's sobs and the whine of wounded men. The officers moved cautiously, weapons still trained, voices shaking as they called into their radios. Shots fired. Multiple down. Need backup now. Daniel exhaled hard, lowering his carbine, but not his guard. Smoke drifted between them all, the stench of gunpowder mixing with chlorine. Ethan's laughter rasped faintly from the patio where he still lay bound, broken wrist pressed to his chest. You think this is over? His voice carried through the smoke, eerie, mocking. Ward will call you traitor on every channel by morning. You're already buried. Daniel looked at Claire, then Michael. His son's wide eyes searched him, desperate for assurance. Daniel gripped his shoulder, voice low but certain. Not while I'm breathing. And for the first time that night, Michael believed him. The alley reeked of smoke and gunpowder. Sirens converged, blue and red pulsing brighter with every passing second. Squad cars braked hard at both ends, doors flying open, officers spilling out with weapons drawn. The chaos slowed into a strange, suspended silence. Daniel kept his palms high, carbine slung but low. Michael clung to his side, trembling, while Claire leaned against the SUV, her blouse darkened with blood. Reza emerged from shadow, rifle lowered, his face drawn but steady. For one moment, It looked like they had survived the worst. Then the radios crackled. All units stand down. Repeat, stand down. Federal Task Force assumes jurisdiction. Secure perimeter only. The words hit like ice water. Around them, officers exchanged uncertain glances. One sergeant, a stocky man with gray edging his beard, frowned. That order didn't come from dispatch, he muttered. His body cam caught it. But a black SUV rolled up fast, lights strobing green and white, not police colors. Doors opened in crisp sequence. Four men in suits, earpieces glinting, stepped out. Their posture wasn't police. It was authority manufactured for effect. One held up a badge-like credential, voice booming, Department of Homeland Security. This is a classified counterterrorism operation. All local units disengage. Daniel's stomach twisted. Ward moved faster than I thought. The officers hesitated, caught between chain of command and what their eyes had just seen. Body cams blinked red, recording every second. The sergeant's voice was low, challenging. These contractors opened fire on civilians. We have injured parties. We're not clearing squat. The suited man's eyes flicked to Daniel, cold and knowing. That man is the subject. He has compromised national security operations. Take his weapon. Michael stiffened, clutching tighter to his father. Claire pushed herself in front of her son, her voice breaking. No, they tried to kill him. They tried to drown my boy. Ma'am, the agent said smoothly, you've been coerced. We'll debrief you safely. Step aside. Daniel's jaw tightened. They weren't talking to her. They were playing the cameras, rewriting the story in real time. Reza shifted his rifle higher, just enough to send a message. Danny, he muttered, they're going to flip this. Pin the firefight on you. And right on cue, another voice carried down the alley. Ethan, bound on the patio, bleeding but still smirking. Check their feeds. He turned the gun on police, on contractors. He's unstable. That's what Ward wanted you to see. A shiver ran through the officers. Doubt hung thick. Daniel knew this was slipping. He raised his voice, cutting through. Look at your own cams. Look at theirs. He pointed at the Phoenix operatives lying dead or wounded, their rifles still hot. Who shot first? Who was drowning a 12-year-old boy? The sergeant's eyes narrowed. His radio hissed again. Unit Sierra, you are ordered to disengage immediately. Failure to comply will be reviewed as insubordination. Michael buried his face against his father's side. Dad, what's happening? Daniel's throat burned. He looked at his son, really looked. Wide eyes, terrified but watching, trying to make sense of the nightmare. Daniel spoke so both the boy and the cameras could hear. What's happening is the truth scares men like Ward more than bullets. That's why they need to bury us. The sergeant finally raised his hand. No one moves. Body cams stay rolling until command confirms in writing. We don't erase a thing. The agents froze, their cover fraying. For the first time, Daniel saw uncertainty in their eyes. But his relief lasted seconds. The SUV's rear door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, silver hair, metals gleaming faintly even in plain clothes. A face Daniel hadn't seen in decades, etched deeper but unmistakable. Colonel Richard Ward. He didn't raise a weapon. He didn't need to. His presence was a weapon. Danny, Ward said, his voice calm, cutting through the noise like a blade. You've caused enough damage tonight. You're coming with me. Don't make your boy watch you die. Claire gasped. Michael froze. And Daniel, for the first time that night, felt the ground tilt under his boots. The war had just stepped into the alley. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Sirens bled into the night like a steady pulse while Colonel Richard Ward stood beside the black SUV, hands folded, expression composed, as if this alley were a briefing room built to his specifications. Danny, he repeated, voice even. Holster the gun. We'll do this quiet. The sergeant slid half a step, putting his patrol car's hood between Ward and Daniel. Body cams are rolling, he said. No one does this quiet. Ward didn't look at him. His gaze stayed on Daniel, evaluating, as if measuring a target's range. You've always been theatrical when wounded, he said. Let the professionals clean up your mess. Your boy needs a hospital. Michael's fingers clamped tighter on Daniel's sleeve. Claire shifted to cover him, chin lifted despite the tremor in her hands. "He needs police," she said. "He needs safety from you." Ward's eyes ticked to her, cool and dismissive, then passed her to the patio where Ethan lay zip-tied and bleeding. "Get him a medic," he told one of the suits without raising his voice. "My son isn't dying in a driveway." The words hit like a rifle stock. The nearest officer blinked. Daniel felt the alley tilt, all the small signs snapping into place. The matching scar under Ethan's chin, the same cold slate of the eyes, the way Ethan moved through orders like he'd been taught by the same man. Ray's whisper threaded the air. "Say it again for the cams." Daniel didn't raise his weapon. He raised his voice. "You just called the man who tried to drown my 12-year-old your son." His tone stayed flat, every syllable meant for microphones. "That makes him my brother." "True." Ward's jaw shifted once, barely. "Irrelevant." "On the record," the sergeant said, eyes narrowing. Ward's gaze sharpened a fraction. "Yes, he's mine." Then, to Daniel, soft, scalding, "You always wanted a family truth. There it is." Claire made a sound that was almost a sob. Michael's stare darted toward the patio, confusion cutting pain into his face. "Brother." The word hung wrong in the air. Daniel took a step into the cruiser's headlight wash so the lenses could see his face. "Then tonight you sent one son to murder the other," he said. "And you used your grandson as bait." Something finally flickered behind Ward's composure. Annoyance, not shame. "No one was going to die in that pool," he said, voice dropping to the careful cadence of a man shaping narrative. "Leverage, not lethality. The boy would have been fine." Claire's control cracked. "He was blue," she said, hoarse. "He stopped fighting." She thrust her bleeding shoulder forward. "I cut him free while your men filmed it." The near suit took a half step, palm out, rehearsed sympathy pasted on. "Ma'am, we'll debrief." The sergeant cut him off with a palm. "Credential again," he said. "Close enough for the lens." The suit hesitated, then held up a badge. Too fast. The sergeant's body cam caught the wobbling hologram, the soft corners of a prop. His mouth tightened. "Dispatch still has no federal confirmation. You try to move these people, I'll arrest you for obstruction." Ward's smile thinned. "Sergeant, you'll be suspended by sunrise." "You'll need a city to suspend me," the man said. "Right now you've got a camera." Ward shifted tactics smoothly, turning the blade. "Package Raven," he said to Daniel, letting the codename hang. "You file where you shouldn't. You talk to people you shouldn't. You make enemies with microphones. You've been a problem since you learned to read." "You taught me to read," Daniel said, almost conversationally. The truth of it cooled him. "And you taught me to count bodies. That's why I file." Ward's gaze flicked, the first sign of heat. "You think you're righteous? You are naive. Men who keep this country clean make stains. They do what's necessary and live with it. You couldn't." "Necessary doesn't need a 12-year-old held underwater," Daniel said. "Necessary doesn't hire mercenaries to shoot at police." "You escalated," Ward said, calm returning like armor. He angled his chin toward the dead Phoenix operatives. "You ignited a gas line. You coordinated an ambush with a neighbor. On your own property. A jury will love that. You hired felons and called them federal," the sergeant snapped. "A jury will love that more." Ward let the sergeant talk, let him feel brave, then slid his eyes back to Daniel. "Come with me now, and you buy your son and wife time," he said. "I keep Ethan out of prison. Claire gets a lawyer. The boy gets counseling. Or you keep playing martyr, and I set the morning shows on fire. Hero turned spree killer. Wife complicit. Child endangered. Pick the headline." Claire flinched but didn't look away. "Don't," she whispered to Daniel. "Don't trust him." Daniel's chest felt hollow and hard at the same time. He tilted his head a fraction, hearing the tiny sounds that told him where people stood. The click of a patrol car's radio knob, the drip of water off Michael's sleeve, the wet rasp of Ethan's breath from the patio. He chose his next line like a trigger pull. "Ethan," he called, never taking eyes off Ward. "Tell him what you called him when you were 12. Silence stretched. The patio hissed, cooling. Ethan laughed, a broken, ugly sound. "He wasn't there when I was 12. He turned his face toward the alley, voice rising, spiteful. "He was never there. For either of us." It landed on the body cams like a signature. Ward didn't move, but his eyes went colder, as if a pane of glass slid into place. "Enough," he said to the suits, quiet. "Bring them." Guns twitched, boots scuffed. The sergeant lifted his pistol. "Don't," he said. "You move on them. You move on us. Which crime do you want recorded?" Ward's gaze skimmed the alley, counting variables, calculating press angles. For the first time, he nodded once, as if to himself, and changed the play. "Very well," he said. "We'll come back with the right paper." He looked at Daniel, almost fond. "You bought yourself a night." He turned for the SUV. Relief loosened shoulders around the alley, one beat too soon. Ward paused with his hand on the door and spoke without looking back. "Phoenix 2 is late," he murmured. "They're thorough." Reza hissed from the hedge. "Immediate and low. Contact roofline." Daniel grabbed Claire and Michael, pulling them tighter behind the cruiser as a darker shadow detached from the townhome roof, silent, fast, harness glinting, dropping into the alley with a compact weapon already up. Ward didn't turn. He didn't have to. He had announced the next move and stepped aside. The knight clenched for the shot. The figure dropped from the roof like a hawk cutting through air, boots slamming concrete with barely a sound. In his hands, a compact, suppressed rifle snapped to his shoulder, already sighted on Daniel. The alley froze, blue lights flashing, police shouting, but all of it blurred into a single, taut heartbeat. Reza fired first. His suppressed round hissed through the night, clipping sparks off the operative's chest plate. The man staggered, but didn't fall. Armor caught it. His rifle cracked, whisper quiet but deadly. A round chewed into the cruiser's trunk inches from Daniel's head. "Down!" Daniel shoved Claire and Michael flat, his body covering them. Bullets clanged against steel, glass shattered. Officers scattered behind their doors, returning fire with frantic bursts. Ward stood calmly by his SUV, the faint smirk on his face illuminated by flashing blue. He didn't flinch, didn't duck. He simply adjusted his cuff, as though violence were a script he'd written years ago. "Phoenix 2, he said evenly, voice carrying over the chaos. "Finish it." The operative advanced, moving with trained precision, round stitching the cruiser to herd Daniel into open ground. Daniel rolled with Claire and Michael behind a tire, carbine snapping up. He fired 3 short bursts, forcing the man back behind the SUV. Sparks flew as rounds slammed metal. "Reza!" Daniel barked. "I see him, hold." Reza's voice was strained, moving fast through the hedge line, trying to circle. His laser flickered once on the roof line, searching for a second shooter. Claire pressed Michael against her, whispering, "Don't look, baby, don't look," though her own eyes stayed open, locked on Daniel as though she could will him invincible. Blood seeped heavier from her shoulder, her blouse soaked through, but she didn't falter. The sergeant broke cover long enough to shout, "All units, do not disengage. Body cams up. Every second." His men obeyed, lenses glowing red, capturing every twitch of Ward's smirk, every flash of Phoenix fire. The operative ducked left, firing low. A round ricocheted, grazing Daniel's calf. Pain flared hot, but he forced it down. He had seconds to end this before Michael became collateral. He breathed, calculated. The SUV's fuel tank sat just behind the wheel well, where Phoenix 2 had taken cover. Risky but not impossible. Daniel shifted, exposing just enough shoulder to bait the shot. The operative took it, round punching through the cruiser's fender. Daniel ignored the sting, sighted fast, and fired at the SUV's undercarriage. The first round pinged off steel. The second tore into the tank. A wet hiss filled the alley as gasoline spilled on asphalt, shimmering under blue lights. The operative realized too late. Reza's rifle cracked. This time the shot punched clean through his neck. Phoenix 2 dropped to his knees, hands clutching his throat, gurgling as his rifle clattered away. He toppled sideways into the spreading fuel. Flames licked immediately, gasoline catching from the cruiser's still-hot engine block. Fire blossomed under the SUV, heat surging. Officers shouted, dragging each other back. "Move!" Daniel roared, hauling Claire and Michael toward the far fence. Reza emerged from the hedge, rifle still smoking, eyes locked on Ward. But Ward didn't move. He stepped calmly into the open, firelight painting his face. "You can kill contractors all night, Danny," he said, voice smooth cold. "But you can't kill the narrative. By sunrise, the country will see a rogue soldier, a complicit wife, and a traumatized child. My son dies a martyr. You die a traitor." Claire spat blood, her voice hoarse but strong. "Not with these cameras. Not this time." Ward's smirk deepened. He gestured toward Ethan still bound on the patio, bleeding but alive. "You really think the cameras will show him for what he is?" "No. They'll show me holding him. They'll show your boy crying in your arms. And they'll hear me tell them you lit the fire." The SUV behind him ignited in a roar, a plume of flame lighting the night. Officers dragged back further, radios screaming for fire support. Ward didn't blink. He turned his face into the light, calm as ever. Daniel leveled his carbine at him. "You won't spin this if you don't walk out." Ward tilted his head, unshaken. "Then shoot, Danny. Shoot your father on 20 body cams. Be the traitor I told them you'd become." Daniel's finger tightened on the trigger. Michael's sob hit his ears, raw and terrified. Claire's hand found his arm, trembling but firm. "Don't give him a shot he wants," she whispered. Ward smiled faintly, as if he had already won. And in that suspended moment, fire roaring, police wavering, Phoenix dying, Daniel realized the final move wasn't about bullets. It was about who owned the story when the smoke cleared. The alley boiled with firelight, smoke curling skyward as the SUV burned, flames painting brick walls in trembling orange. Police lights still flashed, body cams blinking red. Officers shouted over radios, torn between orders and chaos. Ward stood calmly in the inferno's glow, a commander surveying the field he believed he still owned. "Do it," he said softly, only for Daniel. "Shoot me. Prove every word I've prepared." Daniel's carbine stayed locked on him. His finger itched on the trigger, but Claire's voice echoed, "Don't give him the shot he wants." Michael clung to his sleeve, sobbing, wide-eyed, silently begging his father not to vanish into the same darkness that had almost drowned him. Ward's smirk didn't falter. He turned just enough so the patrol dash cams caught his profile, his composure. "Look at him," he said to the officers, projecting his voice. "Armed, unstable, threatening federal authority. You'll watch him kill his own blood." Ethan's broken laugh rasped from the patio, his words carrying weak but clear, "Not his blood. Mine." Every head turned. Bound, bleeding, delirious, Ethan dragged himself onto his side. He spat blood on the tiles. "I'm your bastard, Ward. You never claimed me until tonight. You told me I'd replace him, prove I was the better son." He coughed, choking. "You said drown the boy if it brought him out in the open. That's your footage, Colonel. That's your legacy." The alley stilled. The body cams caught all of it. Ethan's confession, Ward's silence, the ragged truth. Ward's mask cracked, his jaw tightening. He took a step toward Ethan, fury seeping through calm. "Shut your mouth." But Ethan laughed again, bitter and broken. "Too late. They're recording. The world will know you tried to kill your own grandson." The sergeant's voice rang out. "You hear that?" All units heard it. Body cams confirmed. His pistol rose, now aimed not at Daniel, but at Ward. "Colonel Richard Ward, you're under arrest." Ward's veneer shattered. His eyes snapped back to Daniel, venomous. "You think this saves you? By morning, you'll still be a headline. You'll still be the monster they fear." Daniel lowered his carbine, stepping into full view of every lens. His voice was steady, cutting through the smoke. "No. By morning, they'll see a soldier who came home early and stopped a murder. They'll see a father who didn't pull the trigger even when you begged him to. And they'll see what you are, Ward. Another man who thought blood was his to sacrifice." Ward lunged, hand dropping to his coat. Reza fired first. A single suppressed round slammed into Ward's wrist, his concealed pistol skittering across the alley. Officers swarmed, shouting, tackling him hard to the ground. For the first time, Richard Ward looked small, crushed under the weight of men who no longer bowed. Ethan lay still, chest rattling, blood pooling beneath him. He turned his head once toward Daniel, lips curling in a ghost of smile. Guess. I wasn't ordinary either. His breath shuddered out, and he didn't draw another. Claire pulled Michael tight, sobbing into his hair. The boy clung back, eyes squeezed shut. Reza lowered his rifle, exhaling for the first time in what felt like years. Daniel finally dropped his carbine, the weight sliding off his shoulders. He crouched to Michael's level, hands framing his son's tear-streaked face. "It's over," he whispered. "I've got you." Michael stared at him through trembling breaths. "You didn't shoot him." Daniel nodded, voice raw. "Because that's what he wanted, and we're not like him." The flames roared higher, firefighters' sirens echoing closer now. Officers read Miranda rights over Ward's curses, the words swallowed by the night. The cameras never stopped rolling. As dawn hinted at the horizon, Daniel stood beside his family, ash settling on his skin, knowing the war wasn't finished, but the story was his at last. He hadn't just survived the trap. He had broken the cycle, and for the first time in years, he felt the faint, fragile weight of hope.